Welcome back to the Bill and Doug Show. It's Around the Shoe. We do it every Monday. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis, joined by two special guests from the robust Ohio State media mob. Is that the right word? Bill Rabinowitz and Marcus Hartman joining us this week. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Bill Rabinowitz, how long have you been around Ohio State football?
I've covered Ohio State since 2011 for the Dispatch until September. I took a Gannett buyout, purely my decision. That wasn't pushed out. It was just time. And honest to God,
my decision.
And I'm on Substack now, as you can see below my name. Please subscribe, fellow Substackers. Right, we're trying to spread the word about Substack.
Yeah.
Great platform.
Yeah. So Bill, 2011, that's a long time. We're going to talk about your book at the end of the show, which is coming out on Tuesday. Just for the people who watch this show for like 31 seconds and are like, I don't want to watch this. What's your deal? What's the name of your book again? Buckeye
Brotherhood. And it's about the 2024 season. It's based on interviews with more than 50 people, including Ryan Day, all the coaches, almost every player, Nina Day, RJ Day. I mean, I tried to go as deep as I could and do as much as I could in 4 months.
Okay. So Bill, thanks for being here. Marcus Hartman, how long have you been covering Ohio State sports?
I would say, so I started, my first day in the press box was the 2003 Washington game. And I was a student in the information department. I used to have to answer the phones. If there would be a touchdown or any big play, the TV truck would call and just double check everything, all the details and everything like that. So that was my introduction to the Ohio State football press box. And then I spent, I think it was 8 years with Buckeye Sports Bulletin, and then 9 years with Dayton Daily News. And much like Bill, although I did it first, so I think he's copying. I quit. I did not get a buyout, unfortunately. I quit from the Daily News in the summer, basically because they didn't want me to cover Ohio State full-time anymore. And I decided this is my thing and this is what I want to do. So, I rounded up a few freelance things, and I've also got my own site that I'm doing. And so there's been a lot to take on here since the end of July, but enjoying it.
Yeah. Crazy. So for people who don't know, a phone is a thing that used to ring that would be plugged into the wall and you would pick it up and talk into it. And Marcus used to do that. So the world knew what was happening with Ohio State football. We're going to talk about 5 Ohio State football topics, actually like 4 Ohio State football topics. And we're going to talk about books at the end. We'll go, a few minutes on each, go around the shoe, give everybody a chance to answer. And we're going to start with Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate is really having quite the season, folks. He is, I mean, maybe arguably the breakout star of this Ohio State season. I'm not sure. So, Bill Rabinowitz, we will start with you. What is your one word to describe Carnell Tate's season so far for the Buckeyes?
I think his style of play, just how I describe as a player, smooth. I think really, really smooth. I thought about this the other day. Jeremiah Smith's like a thoroughbred, right? I mean, he's just like built like the prototype wide receiver. And I don't have like a comparison that way with Carnell, but he's just, he's got kind of a longer stride, great hands, great reach. I mean, that touchdown catch he made on Saturday, double coverage, reaches up, just snags it. Great hands. But the route running is just so smooth.
Yeah. Fluid. Very. I accidentally said a word. I'm going to stop saying words.
Man.
All right. I know. I'm sorry.
You went out of spurs.
My word's going to be good. My word's going to be good. So don't worry. I'm not ruining it for anybody. Smooth. So this is smooth for Bill. Marcus, Carnell Tate, what do you think?
Well, I was going to say incredible, but actually listening to Bill, I got another one. It's Terry Glenn-like. So Glenn-like would be one word. And that Junior having like an incredible breakout season that you sort of didn't see coming. Glenn obviously didn't completely, Tate didn't completely come out of nowhere like Terry Glenn did, but he was just so overshadowed by the guys last year and by Jeremiah and that smoothness. And he's just kind of a good all around player, but he can go up and he can make the contested catches. And he's great at going downfield and making plays. So that's what I decided to go with. At the last second, I called an audible and I'm going with Glenn-like for his impact on.
Well, so that's all. That's the kind of comparison that only a guy who used to answer the phone in the Ohio State press box could make, because because Marcus, you have a great depth of knowledge about Ohio State's past. And I think one of the most interesting things, Marcus, about Ohio State is constantly trying to compare Ohio State to itself. And there's so many players where man, who does this remind me of? It's well, you have a whole batch of Buckeyes to choose from of who a guy might remind you of. So I bet you, Marcus, don't you think there are people hearing you say Terry Glenn and going oh yeah, that's a good one?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, that's really just kind of came to me because I couldn't think of anything that I thought was interesting. So I was going to settle on incredible, but I wasn't that happy with it. And the incredible part was really just because the story more than the player. He's a good player, but you see guys like that, but just his impact is incredible when you think of all the other things that are there. But then again, that's sort of the story with Terry Glenn from 95. I mean, nobody thought anything of him coming in before that season, and then they had this unstoppable offense, and he was the best receiver in the country. And so it was and you look back and it's well, yeah, of course that happened, but there was no inkling that it was going to happen. And as a spoiler, I've been doing some stuff on the 95 season for Buckeye Sports Bulletin. So that's a little bit, it's more about Eddie George, but reading all the recaps from BSB from back then, you're kind of reminded of what a phenomenon he was. And Tate has been something. I mean, they asked for an AP story on him last week, and then he came through with the big game on Saturday.
Yeah, very cool. Landis, you got a word for Carnell Tate?
Yeah, lucrative. Guy's making himself some money. He is squarely in the conversation, I think, to be the first receiver taken in the draft this spring. Jordan Tyson at Arizona State, Mekhi Lemon at USC are probably the top three guys who are battling for that positioning. And I don't know if Carnell is going to be the first one, but I think he has already solidified himself as a first-round pick. And that was a little bit of a question for me, right? Good, of course, first-round talent, worthy of being included, in this outstanding lineage of Ohio State receivers who have gone in the first round. I wasn't entirely sure coming into the season, but he's answered that question, I think, emphatically with the way that he has played this year. So also it's lucrative because Ohio State had to pay a lot of money to keep him when teams like Oregon and Texas came after him in the offseason. But his play is going to earn him a whole lot of money when it comes NFL time in a few months. So lucrative is the word that I would use.
That's good. That's good. You're obsessed with money, though, Landis. My God.
Who isn't?
Who isn't? You just
love
the ball.
Substack.
Yeah. Sometimes you're forced to be. I'm going to make up a word because I am trying to – the thing that I've been enamored with about Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith has 63 targets this year. Carnell Tate has 41. So Carnell Tate is 22 targets behind Jeremiah Smith, but only has 15 fewer yards than Jeremiah Smith. His reception rate of how often he catches passes thrown to him, he has 34 catches on 41 targets. That reception rate of 82.9% is tied for ninth among power conference receivers, but everybody above him has a lower depth of target and has a lower yards per reception. So there is no better combination of efficient and electric in a receiver in college football. So I had to sound this out. I put it down spelled out syllables. Effectric? You guys like effectric?
I was going to use that.
Elesiant. I think effectric's better. I also am worried I'm going to accidentally swear. So wait. You said smooth, but you actually almost said effectric. Is that what you're saying, Rabinowitz?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So on Substack, that's one of the great things about this is you can make up words. So, right? I mean, can we get this going? You guys, this is free for everybody now. Feel free to use this effectric. Man, that guy, we're going to have Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson saying effectric about Carnell Tate by the end of the year. Mark it down.
Is that good or bad?
That'll
ruin the word.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. Carnell Tate. Gain of 21. Effectric. Yeah. Thanks for being here, Gus. Sorry, Ohio State's excellent bored you.
The funny thing is Gus Johnson did the foreword for the Cardale autobiography that I co-wrote with Cardale, and he sounds like that in a regular conversation.
Bill,
he does?
You only get to plug one book, man. You only
I wasn't plugging. Well, sure, go ahead and buy it. But I'm just telling you, brought up Gus Johnson. You started to sound like Gus Johnson. That's why I brought it up. But he sounds like that in real life.
Is he bored by Ohio State's excellence in real life, or is it only when he's on TV? All right. So we're excited about Carnell Tate. He's having a good year. Marcus Hartman, we'll start with you with question number 2. Ohio State outscored Washington, Minnesota, and Illinois and Wisconsin by a combined score of 134-25 over this recent 4-game stretch between off weeks. On a scale of 1 to 10, how impressed are you by that?
I think I'm gonna go with an 8. Shutting all those teams out would have been maybe a lot to ask, but we've certainly seen times where at least one of those games would have been kind of a clunker that they won 21-10, or in the Urban Meyer era they won 42-28 or something like that. So that they've had so much game control obviously is very impressive, and I think Wisconsin is no good. Obviously, Minnesota might end up being decent, and I think they laid an egg almost at Michigan. They didn't look good. But I really like Washington actually more than Illinois. We'll see how those teams kind of shake out, if any of them can sort of separate themselves from the middle of the Big Ten. But Washington's got those some dynamic guys that you really have to account for, and they've got a good defensive coordinator and I think pretty decent defensive personnel. So that was and then you throw in the trip. I think that was by far the most impressive performance of all of these games. And I kind of looking at the underlying numbers, I don't know that Illinois is really that good. Statistically they're not, but you got to go out and play the games obviously. So that Washington game still sticks with me as being very impressive, and then there were no letdowns after that.
Yeah. Landis, what's your number?
Yeah, I'm a 9. I agree with a lot of what Marcus said. Coming into the year, I thought that 4-game stretch could be a spot where Ohio State might take a loss, and thinking specifically about the Washington and Illinois games. As the season played out for a few weeks and we got to that moment, I was less convinced that Ohio State would lose, but still expecting one of those games to just, be a C kind of game from Ohio State. We've seen that before. They're kind of hard to avoid as you go through the Big Ten season, and they didn't really have one. So they checked a lot of boxes in winning those 4 games and controlling them the way that they did. I have almost no issue with what I saw. Really, I don't have any issue with what I saw on defense, and the only thing on offense that is honestly keeping it from a 10 is the rushing attack. Namely against Illinois and a little bit against Wisconsin. Like that left something to be desired. But overall, to go through that, to make the trip out west, to have kind of no reprieve after it, to have to go on the road 2 other times, and I think more or less put a pretty good foot forward, was a nice stretch for the Buckeyes.
So I'll give them a 9, and the reason that it's not a 10 is because I really did think they had a chance to lose one of those games. I predicted they'd lose one of those games. It just felt like maybe for the first time since that Oregon game in 21 that Ryan Day would kind of have a game like this. It's not against a rival, but it's just man, it's a little tougher than people think, and you lose that game. I actually think it's bad though. It's not a 10 because it's bad for the Big Ten that Ohio State didn't lose one of those, because they made it look.
You can't hold that against Ohio State.
No, they made it look too easy because Alabama beat Georgia by 3, Vanderbilt by 16, Missouri by 3, and Tennessee by 17. And people are acting like Kalen DeBoer is the third coming of Nick Saban and Bear Bryant. And so, this manifestation of the SEC, they all beat each other. Ohio State's so good. I almost think it makes Minnesota and Washington and Illinois look not as good as they actually are, because Minnesota, Washington, and Illinois are all 5-1 in their games other than Ohio State, right? So I do think that there are 3 pretty competitive teams. Wisconsin stinks. But it's almost if Washington would have jumped up and beaten Ohio State, or if Illinois or Minnesota had done the same, Ohio State would still be respected. They'd still be obviously in the playoff. But I don't actually mean it. It's not Ohio State's fault, but it's the media's fault. It's ESPN's fault for not realizing that Ohio State's so good, you forget that the Big Ten does have some depth because there's nobody like Ohio State in the SEC. So I'm dinging them a point because of the incompetence of the rest of college football. Sorry, Ohio State. Rabinowitz, what do you got?
I'm still trying to figure that logic out, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I agree with almost everything Bill Landis said. What I had to do for the Dispatch, one of my last things there, was go game by game and predict Ohio State, and I just think it's really, really hard to go undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
And so the game I picked them to lose was Washington. I knew it was going to be the first road game, long, cross-country trip. They have a dynamic quarterback, skill position players, and they handled their business. And they really did. And that's the hallmark of Ohio State under Ryan Day. They don't lose games like that. The only unranked team they've lost to is Michigan last year. And, of course, that game is a different entity. The only team they've lost to has been ranked lower than 12. They haven't lost to a team ranked lower than 12. They lost to Oregon in, was it 21, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so he takes care of business. That's hard to do.
It is.
I read my analysis yesterday, I guess. All these other blue bloods have lost, all of them. And Ohio State stands alone. It's like they're immune to all the things, short-term and long-term, that afflicts every other program in the country. They never had an extended dip, haven't lost consecutive losing seasons since the stadium opened. 22-24. 19-22-24. It's incredible. So yeah, I give them a 9. I thought Illinois would be a challenging game. I agree with Bill. I was and Marcus that I was more concerned about Washington than Illinois, because Illinois just doesn't have the playmakers. The kind of teams that can upset Ohio State are dynamic quarterbacks who can run. Illinois didn't really have that. Wisconsin was just, they didn't even try. At the end of the first half, he calls timeout. Luke Fickell calls timeout, and then calls for a run play up the middle. What's the point? Yeah. So, I like Luke Fickell. I think he's a terrific guy. I'm trying to put him out of his misery, right? It's just miserable up there. And what was the other game? I forget the other game.
Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota's just kind of like your generic middle of the pack Big Ten team. So they handled their business. They weren't challenged. So I give them a 9.
Yeah. I liked how Bill kept saying during his part, I agree with Marcus. I agree with Bill. I agree with Bill. I agree with Marcus.
I didn't agree with Doug.
I felt left out there for a little bit.
Did you feel bad? Okay. Sorry.
I do feel bad. Landis, third question, we'll start with you. Who is the most valuable Ohio State assistant coach so far this season? And you can't say Matt Patricia.
Okay. I'm gonna give a shout out to a guy that I think has been criticized quite a bit over the last couple of years. I'll say Larry Johnson. I think the defensive line has done a nice job this year, losing 4 starters of the caliber that those guys were last season. You brought back some experience, but not a ton, especially at defensive tackle. He did not have a ton of experience. I think Caden Curry and Caden McDonald are among like the 7 best players on this team right now, and they've been developing with Larry for a couple of years. I think they've done Larry and his defensive line staff have done a nice job getting a guy like Will Smith ready to play. I think perhaps Edric Houston could be starting to turn a corner with the way he's played the last 2 times he's been out there. So that's encouraging. I think the stuff that Matt Patricia has brought to the table with the 5-man fronts and the different job responsibilities that some of these defensive linemen have now and seem to have taken to pretty well is a credit to the players, obviously, but also to Larry. So even like Zion Grady as a freshman, I think is playing well, right? So I understand the criticisms over the last couple of years, and certainly I've been a part of them, but I also want to point out when they're playing pretty well, and I think that group is, so I'll give it to Larry.
Did you notice, Landis, Rabinowitz and Hartman were so impressed by your answer? You said Larry Johnson, and they both took a drink simultaneously. That they both, if you're listening on podcast, they're both like, oh yeah. Oh, Landis, I'm going to sit back and just let you cook and take a long swig here, because that's such a good answer. Because I do think, don't you think, you're saying, Bill, that there'd been a little, Larry Johnson legitimately, I think you could argue is one of the greatest assistant coaches in college football history, or position coaches in college football history. But I think in terms of faith from the Ohio State fan base, there had been a little leakage the past couple of years. Yes?
Yeah, and he also won the Cold War against Jim Knowles, so good for him.
Yeah.
Well, how about that?
I was going to say, I thought the number one concern I had coming into the season was that Larry would have the defensive line playing hero ball again, and that would tank the defense. And it's been the exact opposite. So I think that's a good observation.
Yeah. And yeah, that like Larry Johnson, longtime loyal Penn State Nittany Lion, was like shuffled Jim Knowles off to State College and was like, I won. Okay, I'm gonna say, and I might need help with this. So Bill, Rabinowitz, I'm sure you're not gonna agree, so you can just disagree right now. But I need help from you guys, because I'm partly of why I'm giving this assistant coach credit is because of who he's not and who I think he is a better answer than the guy before him in a similar job. And I'm going to go with Billy Fessler as the quarterback's coach, because if Julian Sayin is completing 80% of his passes, which is the best completion percentage in college football history if he continues on this pace, and it's his first year as a starter, I know that we still probably think Ryan Day is very intimately involved with the quarterbacks. But when Corey Dennis was the quarterback's coach, I was always worried about that room because I wasn't sure. Like, I didn't think that guy was qualified enough to be the quarterback's coach at Ohio State. And you just look at it. So I don't know. It's like, could this young guy be playing any better? And then I think Lincoln Kienholz is a good backup. And here comes Tavian St. Clair, and they've got the room stacked up. And so I think Ohio State fans probably should and do feel good about the guy in that room, because I do think Billy Fessler is qualified to be in that position. So should we be giving him any credit for the way that Julian Sayin is playing football right now? Marcus, yes or no?
Yeah, that's a good observation too, because that's another thing. Before the season, I did write something like basically, well, what if the quarterbacks don't come through? Because if you look at the last 3 seasons, how much development was really going on? I mean, McCord had a hard ceiling apparently, but not only that, last year Howard came mostly baked, obviously.
Yep.
I'm sure. But they obviously had zero faith at all in the backups, because they put Howard in there in the Michigan game when he was playing awful, and we saw that behind McCord, those guys looked like they couldn't play at all. Brown didn't develop at all. So I do think that I think quarterback coaching was a major concern after C.J. Stroud left the building. So I think that's a really good observation from that standpoint too, and to kind of take for granted. Because I definitely, I mean, I doubt that it's, I mean, maybe it is, but I doubt that it's just all Ryan Day. I still think that Day really is doing all these other things as well.
Yeah,
and I credited Fessler last year all the time, and unsolicited. It's not like we come in and said, hey, say good things about Billy Fessler. I mean, it was like most people were probably like, who is that guy he's talking about? And he had good things.
Yeah. So take that, Rabinowitz. Marcus liked my answer. Bill, who you got for assistant coach here?
Well, I will give both you guys credit. Larry was my first choice, and Doug was my second choice. So I'm going to go with somebody who, a little under the radar. I'm going to go with Keenan Bailey, because he has gotten this unit. And I'll share this a little. I know you're going to give me a hard time about this little anecdote, but he wrote on the board last year, the start of spring practice, it told the players, you are the least talented unit on the team. And they're all looking at him like, this is 24. They're looking at him like, wait a minute, what's going on here? He told them, you guys suck, essentially. And they, sorry. And they
Rabinowitz wrote that on my board before the show started. He said, Doug, you are the least talented person on the show.
I didn't. But so Keenan Bailey got that unit to play well. And last year, G. Scott had a solid year for them. And then this year they've got like 5 guys, and he is somehow balancing that. Matt Clair's the headliner, but Will Kazmarek, Jelani Thurman, Nate Roberts as a freshman kind of plays that fullback position in short yardage. I'm forgetting somebody. Am I not? Who am I
Bennett
forgetting?
Christian.
Bennett Christian, right. They're all contributing. And so, I think Larry Johnson's done a great job. I mean, replacing 4 starters is really hard to do. Caden Curry, well, you could say all of them have emerged as stars, right? I mean, all of them have. I mean, Tywan Malone, who was kind of written off, the whole baseball. I mean, he's played really well. He made that play against Illinois. It was like, holy crap. I mean, that was a great play by the goal line. And then Billy Fessler, like Doug said, I mean, Julian's 80% is insane. Yep. Will Howard has the Ohio State record at 73%. To go from 73 to 80. And some of the 20% are deliberate throwaways. Yeah. Just smart plays where he's throwing the ball away. It's really impressive what Julian Sayin has done. And like Marcus said, look, head coach today cannot be in the room with these guys all the time. He's got so many other responsibilities. He's the CEO, essentially. So, yes, he has to delegate it to Billy Fessler, and the results speak for themselves.
Yeah. All right, Hartman, what you got?
I'm going to go with James Laurinaitis because the important role that you've got Arvell Reed and Sonny Styles playing. There's a lot for them to handle. So he's obviously had them ready. He's got their minds clear and able to take on all of that stuff. And he must be, working well with Patricia from that standpoint in terms of being able to combine. There's a lot of things kind of put together to get those guys playing like that and then use them correctly. That's why I thought it's been interesting, because Patricia said a couple of times how he was able to use the spring to evaluate those guys, but he credited the staff also with kind of saying, here's what these guys are good at and here's what they're not, so that he was able to utilize these guys kind of all to the best of their ability. And linebackers coach is kind of at Ohio State is like, what have you done for me lately kind of a thing as well. I know he's kind of been under some scrutiny, and then this year that these guys are having such a good year, and that's been that way all the way back to Fickle was a genius some years and a dunce some years. It kind of depended on how experienced the guys were and what they were able to do. So I think you've got to be. There's just so much. It's so impressive what Reese and Style, and it's honestly it's hard to evaluate linebackers unless they're obviously doing something really bad or doing something really good, because they're sort of a cog in the machine. But they've been so good and at so many different things. And Reese, it's not like he had played a whole lot. He'd played a little bit, and Styles is kind of coming into his own now. After moving around positions, but and then you've got Pierce. I mean, I don't think anybody expected him to play as much as he has played. So he's got these guys really in a good place.
Even Robert Pettyjohn, had that one game where it was like, ooh, this freshman can play.
Yeah. Landis, do you think, when you think about the staff cohesively, because I think you could make an argument for Carlos Lachlan and the way he's brought Bo Jackson and now maybe Isaiah West along and trying to figure out this room on the fly. I mean, Tim Walton obviously is at the top of his game with the corners. Matt Guerrieri. Nobody mentioned Brian Hartline, but obviously the receivers are the best position group in America. Do you feel? I think a lot of people have felt like there have been times when you've kind of felt like a hole on the staff of I don't know about this. Do you when you go 1 through 10 with the assistant coaches? Are there fewer leaks than maybe there have been in other years?
Yeah, I think so. Really, the only one. Well, obviously, like the Matt Patricia hire raised a lot of eyebrows, but he's answered all those questions, and certainly he was experienced enough to get the job that he got. The only one that was kind of strange or off the radar in terms of positional fit was Tyler Bowen, because he hadn't really coached offensive line before. But then you go out and get Marcus Johnson and Charlie Dickey to kind of help him out, who are very experienced offensive line coaches. So even I think that there's questions on the offensive line certainly, but I don't think that's gone poorly to this point. So no, I don't know that I look at the staff up and down and point to a spot and say that's the weakness right there. It does seem like a fairly strong staff.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So topic number 4 is still about Ohio State football, but we're starting to talk a little bit about book stuff. So the question is, pick one player off this team to write a book about, off the current roster. Who is it? And I'm going to go off the board here. Just so that Rabinowitz disagrees. And I'm going to say Ethan Onyanwa. And I think you could tell an NIL story through this guy who's a 3-year starter at Rice. And then it's holy moly, you have a chance to go to Ohio State. And Tom Luganbill from ESPN is saying this is the best offensive lineman in the portal. And he has offers from Florida State and Oklahoma and Texas A&M and Iowa. And how much money does he actually get from Ohio State to come and probably be the starting left tackle for the defending national champions in this brave new world of college football and all the opportunity it provides? And then it doesn't go well. And then what? And that you can tell, I think, this story of nothing is guaranteed. There are teams how are they evaluating these guys? How did Ohio State really figure out that they wanted Ethan Onyanwa? What was that process? And I'm intrigued by, and it's not a shot at the player. It's just the idea of, it's this whole new part of college football that is fundamental and primary. It's not a bonus. It's not hey, Joe Burrow's available. And Ed Orgeron is give me that guy down in Baton Rouge. It's this is how they're hey, we need to add players to help our team. But how do you really find out about them? And who do you ask? And what's that process like for both program and player? And then when it doesn't go as you expect, because certainly Ohio State's paying, I assume, Ethan Onyanwa as a starting left tackle, and he's currently like a backup interior offensive lineman. What does that mean? And so I think it's not, because I think sometimes like when things don't go right, and then everybody has to adjust. What's that like? Is he homesick? Does he wish that he was back at Rice? Is he glad that he came here? Is he meeting new people? Is it an opportunity that he's glad he took, even if it doesn't work out how he expected? I think it would be a chance to maybe tell an NIL story, because this, I think, happens more and people forget about it. And then you just remember the huge NIL successes, right? Everyone knows Fernando Mendoza, but there's some that don't go that way, right? So everyone, hey, you get Caleb Downs and Quinshon Judkins and Will Howard in the portal and you win the national championship, but it doesn't always go that way. So anyway, I knew nobody else would take that. Rabinowitz, you're done though, right? This is theoretical. I'm not asking for another Bill Rabinowitz book, but theoretical. Okay. You're written out. You've written 500,000 words about Ohio State football, but if you were going to write one about a player off this team, who would it be?
Well, first of all, I think your idea is actually a really good one. And that was not obviously what I was thinking of, but I just think you could tell the story of NIL and just how uncertain it is through that. I will go with somebody that nobody would pick because he's not a star. I mean, at least among the linemen or about the starters, just because I know his story. Tegra Shabola. It comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, speaks like 5 or 7 languages or something like that. He came here, and that country is now on the banned list. So he couldn't come now. If this were 20 years ago, he would not be allowed to come here and remake his life. And his family wasn't like dirt poor or anything. They were professionals. Parents were professionals. But they could see the kind of the chaos going around them. And they said, let's get to America. They had family in Cincinnati. They settled in there. He came to Ohio State, I forget, as a very young player, and saw the wood. He was like, I want to be here. Has he been a great player? No, he hasn't, but he's been a starter. He was a starter on a national championship team starting this year. And a really interesting guy. If you ever have a chance to talk to him at length, a really interesting guy. Again, would it sell a lot of books, the Tegra Shabola story? No, but in terms of the story, you could go way back to the whole Africa stuff and all that. So, I wish we had time to tell those stories. I couldn't get into most of it even in the book, but just it's just in terms of a fascinating story. That's a great one.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Marcus, what do you have?
Well, I think the obvious choice would be Caleb Downs, and so I figured someone else would say that. There's already books written about him, even the national people coming in. But I thought actually to go off the board a little bit, Caden McDonald would be interesting because they haven't had a guy like him in a long time. And that's again where it's like completely out of nowhere, I guess, that they're doing this with the defensive line. I figured it would go back to being Larry Johnson. Everything before the season was about Edric Houston being able to be a dominant 3 technique, and then he's kind of still trying to find his way. But they've got this nose guard that they haven't had this type of guy since like the late 90s maybe, because even the good nose guards they've had were like Luke Fickell, who were like 300-pound or less wrestlers who just played on guile more than anything else. And so then there's this guy who is a huge part of the defense. And, you could go back and talk to the story about how you've got to develop. There's a million guys who maybe have his measurements, but they don't have the athleticism. And I don't know how many guys they've brought in who just didn't answer the bell. They didn't develop. And the way that guy's playing and it's kind of a lot of the stuff that they want to do is sort of based on how good he has been. I think that could be an interesting story that's sort of like your idea that there could be kind of a bigger thing to it, and talk about, the unique role of these big middle plugging nose tackles. Because I've been making the case for a long time. You could run a 3-4 if you want to. In college, you don't have to have a 320-pound nose tackle. He just has to be Luke Fickell or somebody who, you just have to be able to demand a double team, because if they don't double team you, you'll make the tackle now, and then not be completely blown out of the hole by 2 guys. And so guys of all shapes and sizes can do that, but this is a bona fide guy that they've been looking for a really long time.
Landis, I got to say, I mean, I can just imagine that young Buckeye fan going to the bookstore and just looking at, should I get the Ethan Onyanwa book? Should I get the Tegra Shabola book? Should I get the Caden McDonald book? No offense to those guys, but Landis, you have some room to maneuver here.
Yeah, I'm going way off the board. I got nervous when you guys said I'm going off the board and then picked players everybody knows. Joey Velasquez.
Ooh, two-time
national champ on both sides of the rivalry. It'll never happen again. He's an astronaut. He's the first man on the moon. I actually know nothing about his personal story. I've never talked to him. But the fact that he's on both sides of the rivalry winning national championships at a time where the rivalry is probably at its most intense since like the 10-year war, right? Like the vitriol in the rivalry is insane, and like social media only amplifies it. And he called himself, he was unfortunately put into the middle of it, with like Michigan fans accusing him of things that he didn't do relative to like the Connor Stallions investigation. So like there's a lot to dig into there if you ever would ever want to talk about it. Like I think you could like frame a modern Ohio State Michigan rivalry book around Joey Velasquez. So that's who I would pick.
Well, you guys can have at it.
Sports journalists of Ohio, the Jeremiah Smith book is there for the taking because none of us said it.
And the Julian Sand book, for that matter, right?
And the Julian Sand book, and at least Marcus like mentioned the Caleb Downs book, but like there's a lot. The Arvell Reese book. Anyone want to write an Arvell Reese book? Like there's a lot
Tate.
of room.
Carnell Tate,
like I'm
Are
telling
the
you,
best
man,
books ever about the most famous people?
that's well said. I mean, that is like no, right? I mean, like that's the thing. Is like as Rabinowitz knows, and like we all know other guys who have written books. It's like you go to the backups. The backups have the stories, right? I mean, they tell you what's what. The guys who were in the room, yeah. So it's like, well, I was there. Like this guy was yelling at this guy, and I was just sitting there taking it all in. Like that's the guy you talk to. So okay, so now let's actually talk about books. And we will start with Bill Rabinowitz. Bill Rabinowitz, tell us again, Buckeye Brotherhood, when is it available to the folks out there?
I got to do it. Tomorrow, Tuesday, October 21st, it is officially available. What else do you want to know about it?
I want to know, what's it about and what was it like writing it? What was your process? Did you like it? Did you hate yourself? How did you do all the interviews? Just like give people a little behind the scenes look on what it's like to write a book about an Ohio State season.
Well, I've done this twice before. I wrote about the 2012 undefeated season, Buckeye Rebirth, and the 2014 one, The Chase. All, and Ghost Road or co-wrote the Carnell thing. All of them were accidental. I didn't intend to do any of them. I never really aspired to be an author. But I remember 2012, Urban Meyer said, somebody should write a book with this team. And I kind of went, okay. And then it was like, if I did that, I have to do 2014.
Yeah.
And then kind of the same deal with this one. I mean, it was such a great story. And I only had 4 months because this book has to come out for the holiday season. So I because I've done that before, I know what I'm putting myself through, and it's hell. I mean, it really is hell because I really didn't take a lot of time off from my day job. I think 3 weeks. Which meant I was working just 16, 18-hour days every day. By one day off from January 27th till May 27th was my son's wedding. I said, I'm not working that day. I'm not working that day. Every other day, it was just, no golf, no. I'm going to play guitar a little bit and, whatever. But it was just nose to the grindstone for that long. The first interview I did was with Nina Day. And we sat for 2 hours over at a coffee shop in Powell. And after that interview, I knew that this had a chance to be pretty good because she really was very revealing about her relationship with Ryan and his background. They grew up together in Manchester, New Hampshire. And then it just built from there. I got Ryan.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know how many times it was, a few times in his office. And then it would be like 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there when he was driving somewhere. And then I talked to Jim Knowles for 3 hours while he was driving in a snowstorm from Columbus to State College. I talked to these guys. Jack Sawyer was 2 hours plus. Will Howard, 2 hours plus. I mean, I talked to everybody. There were just two players, I don't want to name them, who just blew me off. That's it. Just a couple others declined politely, and that was fine. But I talked to almost every significant player on the team. Every coach except for one. And again, he just, one of those deals, I think my emails or text got lost in the shuffle. But I really try to tell the story of how and why they won. Everyone knows what happened, right? How many everyone knows? Like, for example, I have an entire chapter on the Jack Sawyer play, the scoop and score. Obviously him, Larry Johnson, what was the move? The side scissors move, he told me, all this stuff. Ross Bjork, what were you doing? And he said that he put his hands in his head and heard the roar of the crowd and knew that it was good. But then the roar got louder, and he couldn't figure out why it was getting louder and louder and reaching this crescendo until he finally opened his eyes and looks on the scoreboard and sees Jack Sawyer going in the end zone. What happened? What happened? So this whole one chapter is just about the play and everyone's reaction to the play, what they were doing to the play. I mean, that's just kind of a fun chapter. But there are other ones about what the days endured after Michigan, which I'd written about in the Dispatch, but not to that degree, of course. They were, again, I don't want to give too much away, but let's just say that they were ready to depart. I'm pretty sure that they were not going to fire Ryan Day, but I think the days were done. I mean, I think they were like, this is just not worth it. The kids were getting harassed at school. They're mental health advocates, and here they are. Their mental health is being jeopardized. And so, to me, these books are not so much about what did they do on 3rd and 8 against so-and-so. It's who are these people? What drove them? What did they overcome? I mentioned the Tegra Shabola thing earlier. Austin Saraveld was really good. I mean, Jaden Fielding, missed 2 field goals against Michigan. He gets basically accosted at his apartment. He needed a police escort to go to class on campus the next week. I mean, those are the stories that are just, I kind of knew that I was on the right path when I could hear my wife reading a chapter and I could hear her laughing and I could hear her crying. I thought, okay, but I think the process, I don't know what other authors are, how they feel. In fact, I'm going to do a podcast with Jeff Pearlman later today. I'm going to talk about this, but I think that, at least for me, I think the whole time, this sucks. I'm terrible. This sucks. This is awful. I would regret doing this. And if you're lucky, because you see the holes, you see what you don't have. You see, okay, it's like 5,000 pieces, jigsaw puzzle, and you've got to create the pieces. Then you got to figure out where they fit. And again, having 4 months to do it is not ideal. And so I just, January, February, March, April, I'm thinking, oh God, this sucks. And then if you're lucky, by the end, you feel like it doesn't suck. And then maybe you have a little bit of time to reflect and it's not just so immediate. You think, yeah, okay, it's pretty good. And I will say now, I think it's the best of the books I've done. Just because the story is just such a great story. And nobody had really told the Ryan Day story that this book goes into.
I hope you ripped the AD. Ross has got to be watching that play. He's not paid to be here and cover his eyes at the biggest moment of the season, man. Hope you ripped him. Say it to his face.
Oh, I did. I did. So I think I laughed when he told me that. I think that was my reaction. I think I just laughed. Yeah. Really? Yeah. You didn't see it? One of those deals. Nina didn't really see it. Nina buried her head into she was with a friend, and she knew it was good. She saw the scoop. I don't know if she saw the score, but it was a similar reaction.
Yeah. But she's not getting paid by Ohio State. She can bury her face however she wants. Marcus, you are a very interesting person and being intrigued by the history of Ohio State. Do you have anything in your head like besides Rabinowitz, selling books for free on this show? Like, I'm interested in what people think they might want to write someday. Do you have something like that, Marcus?
I've had a proposal for now it's like 10 or 12 years, but I want to do something called, I've kind of learned in interviewing people for Buckeye Sports Bulletin. A lot of times I would do and now I've got a dog here. I would do like retrospectives on some of the teams, like when it was the 1968 team's 50th anniversary or something like that. 61. So I've talked to some of the people from those, and I kind of realized that there's sort of an interesting schematic wrinkle to like all of their national championship teams. So my idea would be the winning strategies of Ohio State football, because and you could go back a lot as far as you want. I mean, even 1930s, the first time that they sort of dominated Michigan for a while, you had Francis Schmidt with installing his sort of version of the spread offense, kind of, and they blew them out and shut them out 4 years in a row. And that eventually fizzled out, but that leads to a lot of modern offenses from Sid Gilman and things like that too. Then he's replaced by Paul Brown, who is the complete opposite of him in every way, but he's also the father of modern football in a lot of ways. And then Paul Brown, he was still running some wing T. I mean, he wasn't running the West Coast offense or anything like that at Ohio State, but he was still running some single wing and mixing it with the T. And then Woody comes along and he's all T. He gets rid of, because the first team to win the Rose Bowl, it's the 1949 team. They're still running both the wing T and some T offense. But Woody says, nope, I'm a T man. That's what I'm running. I don't care. I got the Heisman Trophy winner is back here, and he's just going to become a secondary player now. This is what we're going to do. And, he has his success with that, but he's got to evolve. And in 68, now this is a well-known story, but he brings in George Champ and they install the I formation, and they're also running like no huddle that he picked up from Upper Arlington High School, and they led the country, I believe, in like plays per game in 68 and 69. They're running full throttle the whole season, and then it all blows up at Michigan, and he shuts it down after that, and he doesn't, he kind of gives up on that. The 70s, there's some innovations where he's running some triple option and things like that, and the tailback really becomes a guy, with Archie Griffin and things like that. And then you even can forward, I mean, Tressel had a few different kind of schematic nuggets. You've got D'Antonio running that defense that became sort of evolved into one of the defenses a lot of teams would run over the years. Tressel would always have the Michigan wrinkle, where they would pull out some play they hadn't run all year and it would work against Michigan. And then I had this idea before Urban, but then obviously 2012 and 2014, you've got the Urban Meyer offense and how that kind of changes things. And I'm sure there's plenty of, it's kind of the same thing, Kelly and them coming in. So that's been my idea, but I've never gotten around to making a hard pitch for it.
Yeah. Landis, you like that idea, don't you?
I'll read a ball book. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
What was I thought? Winning... Like, there was a book called Blood, Sweat, and Chalk about 15 years ago now. It was a guy from Sports Illustrated wrote it, but I can't remember off the top of my head who it was. But he went through like a lot of the different offensive innovations with the NFL, and it'd be kind of that kind of a thing. And there was a lot of short chapters in that book. And I think it'd be something maybe similar to that. And it would have been better if I did this before Earl Bruce died, because I had him on the phone once, and he was talking about how also there's funky years with the offense. Like in 1952, randomly they threw for 1,500 yards, which I didn't even believe was real. I just thought they made that up in the record books. And I had Earl talking about that for like a minute, and then he had to go. And I never got like the further explanation for how that happened. And so there's a lot of little quirky things like that as well.
Love it. Love it. Please write it. Go write it. Go write it. Go write it. Go.
No, hopefully I'll have some more. Maybe I think I could do it with a full-time job. It'd be hard to balance it. But now if I can carve out all my workflows, I might have a better shot at doing something on it.
I like it. All right, Landis, what do you got for us?
I did have a joke about writing a book about Tate Martell going 10 for 10, but I wouldn't actually write a book about that. No, I don't know that I have like a specific moment in time with Ohio State that I would want to write about, but and I don't even know if people do these anymore. But just like the book where you're just like living in it for a year, right? And you don't know what's going to happen, like the like what John Feinstein did, what Buzz Bissinger did with Friday Night Lights. Like I was actually approached a couple of years ago to do that with Ohio State for the 2022 season. Just like stop covering them, in bed with them, write a book about whatever happens that year. But I couldn't do it because our son was going to be born that January, and it's like I can go through the whole year and then miss the most important part and then not be able to write it. So it never happened. But that is something that I very much remain interested in if I would ever get the opportunity to do it with Ohio State or really with anybody else. I think what Bill had to do with this book, and what a lot of people who write sports books nowadays have to do, which is like kind of go back to it after the fact and line up all these interviews and like get people to open up, is really difficult. So like to execute it is super impressive. And I actually have read Bill's book. It's very good. I would recommend anybody go out and get it. There's some really interesting stuff in there, including which I don't think I've seen anywhere else. Ryan Day, like, kind of talking about Connor Stallions. Like, it's in the book, and he's not talked about it on the record anywhere that I can recall. So that's in there too. But yeah, I think any like embed situation would be a book that I'd be interested in writing if I could pull it off.
Yeah, that's good. I always wanted to do a thing, and then Landis and I did it as a 5-part podcast. So, like, I don't know that I would have another idea, but I always was intrigued by the idea that 2006 Ohio State, Michigan, the Big Ten is at the top of the college football mountain with that 1-2 game, and then Ohio State gets blown out by Florida, and the SEC takes over for 20 years. And then like the beginning of the Big Ten coming back was Urban coming to Ohio State, and now here we are. And I think we're in a different era of college football, but I was always intrigued by like that moment. If you would have said like Ohio State versus Michigan, 1 versus 2, should they be a rematch in the national title game? And Nick Saban and Urban Meyer are just lurking in the South to like pull the rug out from everybody. But then Landis and I did the 25-year winter, and Landis, like, that was the first episode. So it scratched the itch. And also we didn't have to write like 100,000 words and interview 80 people for it. We just kind of said it. We
did write like 80,000 words.
Fair. We did write it, but yeah. So, so who knows? I don't have the discipline. But the thing is, Rabinowitz, when you write a book, you do become a millionaire. So that's the best part of writing books.
Oh my God. I would just say the book publishing business, my timing just sucked. I think the early days of like getting really big advances or whatever was before I did Buckeye Rebirth in 2013. I wrote that because the Great Recession happened in 2007 and 8, and it really gutted the publishing industry. There's almost no market for national sports books unless you just have the LeBron James story or something like that. Even Ohio State with its fan base was not considered by New York publishers to be a national book. So no, I always kind of joke, and it's probably not a joke, that I'd be better off working at fast food place for the money that I'm going to get. I mean, it's, I'm not doing this for free, but it's, if you're going to do something for money, don't write a book.
And the other thing is, if you work at a fast food place, you can slip a chicken nugget in your pocket every now and then and get a little bit on the side. You know what I'm talking about? So sorry that you wrote a book instead. Bill Rabinowitz, go read your book. Go read his book, everybody. You'll find it wherever, on Amazon and bookstores, Buckeye Brotherhood. But where else can the folks find you, Bill Rabinowitz?
Yeah, I'm doing numerous book signings. The first one is at Gramercy Books on November 10th, and I've got one at the Book Loft a week later. I think it's the 18th. I've got one in Dayton the 20th, 2 or 3 Barnes and Nobles ones in November, one in December. So I'll be out and about pushing the book and pushing the Substack too, because that's now my new job. So yes, I got a buyout, and yes, I'm still getting paid by the Dispatch for a while, but not forever. And so I'm sure I can speak for you, for Doug and Bill, to say we need the money, right? I mean,
no, you can't. No, you can't speak for us, because Landis and I didn't write a book and we didn't get a buyout. So no, don't speak for us.
Okay, then just give all your money to me.
Yeah. Don't cry poor, rolling around in your piles of money telling fast food stories. It's like, you're fine. Landis and I need money more. But good luck to you, Bill. Thanks for joining us here. Great job on the book, and go find him on Substack. Marcus, what do you got popping here for the folks?
I maybe took on a lot for trying to write for a few different sites. So I'm doing some Ohio State stuff and then some high school football things for Press Pros Magazine, which is an ascendant site started kind of in West Central Ohio. Cover a lot of the Midwest Athletic Conference, which is Marion Local and Coldwater and some of those teams. But they've found we also cover the Miami Valley League, which is like Troy, Piqua, Tippecanoe, and they've expanded to Central Ohio, have a writer in Northeast Ohio now. They've found actually a lot of people throughout the state are interested in Marion Local and their 72-game winning streak and things like that. Cover Ohio State baseball as well, football. We've got a UD boy who's a Hall of Fame baseball writer, covers the UD Flyers. So sort of an all-encompassing site that's you want to check out for all of those things. I'm contributing some to Buckeye Sports Bulletin too, and I just thought it would be fun. I've got a site, cusswordsports.com, and the main thing that I'm doing with that is on Fridays I'm doing a kind of a This Week in Ohio State Football that is just sort of meant to be a roundup of everything that happened during the week. During football season, that'll be mostly original things, but I'm planning on, especially the rest of the year, there's a lot of coverage that, it's a little more diverse in terms of people doing unique stories. So I think that's going to be, I want it to be an all-encompassing thing with the best I read during the week, and I'm doing some updates off of that, just depending on time. Like I've done kind of the most interesting thing I heard out of any press conference. Basically, it's sort of supposed to be a quick. Truly, this is just a nugget that I thought was cool and why. Not recapping the whole press conference. Obviously, you can read that anywhere you want. And my site is free, at least for now. Because it's kind of a side hustle, but kind of not. Sort of depends on how some of the other gigs go and what I'm able to do. But obviously, I would welcome your subscribing. And I don't think I'm not trying to outdo Bill or anybody else. From that standpoint, I think obviously I've learned in the different places I've written that there's an unending supply of an unending hunger for Ohio State content. So I'm just trying to add my own perspective, and so we're starting out with that being just sort of something else that you can read along with all the other stuff that you're reading. And maybe I'll come up with kind of a historical post of the week or something like that. I'm putting the plan together in the air at this point, especially with it being football season and so many things going on, and still covering a game on Friday nights and the games that I can, all the home games. And I'm hoping to be able to travel here soon. I've got my Michigan credential already. I'm hoping to do some more road trips here as we go, but, just kind of, still have to make a living. So places that'll pay me to write, I'm still doing that for them too. And we'll see kind of how it grows from that standpoint. I've also been uploading some things to YouTube, and I've got a channel on there, a playlist you can look at for it's Chalk Talk. So if we ever whenever Ryan Day or somebody goes into a nugget about why they call a play or what they think about using a fullback or why they're using 12 personnel, I like to clip that 2 or 3 minutes, put that up there, and kind of put that out there for the football junkies like Bill and I and the people on Twitter, and I'm hoping that can be a little thing maybe that people can use as a reference, and I'll usually write a post off of that as well. Nice.
Landis, are we writing this week or what? Do you know?
Yeah, we'll probably write something. Yeah. We got some stuff up already this week. I wrote something on Monday telling Ohio State fans and not let anybody tell you that Julian Sain hasn't played anybody compared to the other Heisman candidate quarterbacks, because he's played on average stronger defenses than all of them. So you can go read that on Substack.
Yeah, cram that, Ty Simpson.
Yeah,
so you can find us at billanddougosu.substack.com. And here on this YouTube channel, Ari Wasserman will join us for a show later this week. So make sure you check back and find us there. For now, thanks so much to Bill Rabinowitz. Thanks to Marcus Hartman. On behalf of Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises. Thanks to you guys for being here. And that was Around the Shoe on the Bill and Doug Show.